Hello, welcome back to my channel. I finished reading Ikigami The Ultimate Limit by Motoro Mase, and figured I'd do a review, seeing as nobody really talks about this series. I've seen a couple people who have like the first couple volumes, but I haven't seen anybody who's actually read the whole thing and talked about it. So, yeah. First of all, I'd like to say I did really enjoy it. I found the first three volumes at a used bookstore. My first three volumes are water damaged pretty badly, so they're all like curved and yellowed and whatever, but still very readable, and yeah, I think it was worth it anyway. And then I picked up the last seven volumes new from Right Stuff, um, and then binge read the rest of the series in like a day. So basically, this story is about a society where they have this thing called the National Welfare Act, which basically is that every first grader, so every 6-year-old at school, gets injected, and every 1 in 1,000 of those injections contains a capsule that will release, I guess, kind of like a poison when the person is between the ages of 18 and 24 years old. So they'll die within 24 hours of that capsule releasing in their body. And it's completely anonymous. There's no way to choose what person's getting the capsule or not. It's completely random and anonymous. Um, and so the point of the National Welfare Act is so that everybody will feel like they appreciate life more, less crimes will be committed, less suicides, things like that. They just want to increase the quality of life and make people appreciate it more by essentially killing innocent people. So it's a, you know, government control kind of story, so it does go into a bit of politics, which is kind of cool. But basically, it's an episodic story about this man on the cover here. He's on every single cover, named Fujimoto. He is an Ikigami delivery man. So basically, he gets every month a group of Ikigami, which he has to deliver to each person, telling them they have 24 hours left to live. They are dying for the National Welfare Act. And so it's a story about him kind of going through this job. He's fairly new at it, and it's just him going through struggling with his job, about the fact that he's basically just giving people death certificates, and struggling with whether or not the National Welfare Act is a good thing. Um, yeah, so it's very episodic. The art is fantastic. Um, it's quite realistic. Each volume has 2 stories in it, and they all start out pretty much the same. It's Fujimoto gives someone an Ikigami, then you watch the last 24 hours of their life unfold. Um, yeah, so every single volume is, except for the very last one, I think, is split right down the middle. Each character gets 3 chapters. You know how it works. They get an Ikigami at the beginning, they die at the end of the 3 chapters, moves on to the next character. None of the stories I found to be particularly uninteresting, which was nice. All of them were very different, and they all had different motives for what they were doing. And they all came from different kind of walks of life and different family situations, and that was kind of cool. Yeah, there were certain characters that I liked better, but again, you know going into it, they're dying at the end of those 3 chapters, so you get as much out of it as you can, and then you move on. And while it is very episodic in that sense, especially at the beginning, there is a background story of the overarching point of, is the National Welfare Act a good thing? Should this be happening? And what do we do about it if we want it to stop? Because the government is obviously controlling and does not tolerate any kind of speaking out against the National Welfare Act. And these people who are given their Ikigami are seen as national heroes for dying for the National Welfare Act. Of course, you can imagine that not all of those people see it that way when you're told you're going to die in 24 hours. So this story, I think, hit me very hard, and I appreciated a lot because I'm at that point in my life where I'm between the ages of 18 and 24. And so watching these characters who are my age being told that they only have 24 hours left to live when they're just trying to figure their lives out. Some of them are just reaching a point where they're happy finally, and or approaching happiness and stability. Um, you know, I'm at that point in my life where I found a job I love, and watching these characters who have these passions and they found something that they really want to do and they're planning for their futures, and then all of a sudden it all comes crashing down is heartbreaking. Um, so I think that honestly, if you're between the ages of 18 and 24, this series will hit you a lot harder than it will if you're younger than that. Um, because I'm at this stage in my life, and I think if you're at this point in your life, as these characters are, then you can really appreciate the anger and the sadness and the frustration that these characters are feeling when they're handed that Ikigami. Um, I'm really glad I read this now as opposed to finding it years ago when I was in high school, because this story hits me hard now. Um, like I said, it does deal with the government corruption. It goes deeper into that as the story goes on. But I think that this was a very steady story. At no point was I bored or thinking, wow, this needs to end now. Why is this still going? Um, it it was consistent. There wasn't really ever a point where it got better, I think. So if you didn't like the first volume, I would suggest not continuing, honestly, because it's pretty much the same thing. It's very steady all the way through. It was consistent. There isn't much more than that. So if you read the first volume or two and didn't really like it, I wouldn't suggest continuing. If you did like it, I would suggest finishing it because I think you'll enjoy the rest of it. There is a twist kind of at the end, but it isn't a twist that will prevent me from rereading the series and enjoying it a second time, which I really appreciated. I think it's the kind of thing where if I reread the series, I'll be able to look for little clues that I didn't notice the first time, as opposed to something that ruins the series and you won't be able to reread it again because you know the ending. So that's good. I'll definitely reread this in the future, but just not obviously right now because I just finished it. But I'll appreciate that the more information that I know now, knowing the whole story, when I go back to reread it. I will also say that the ending is very abrupt, I felt. I remember as I was on the last couple pages thinking, how is this going to wrap up in like 2 more pages? I don't understand. Um, I'm not disappointed with the ending because honestly, I think I would have reacted the same way and did the same thing as Fujimoto, but I don't really know what I was expecting the ending to be, but it wasn't that, and it wasn't satisfying, I guess. Um, it wasn't necessarily disappointing, but I wasn't like, wow, that was a phenomenal ending. It just was kind of abrupt and like, okay, now this is it. Um, yeah, so if you're looking for a super cool, badass ending, you're not going to find it. Um, it's just kind of a realistic, yeah, that's probably what would actually happen kind of ending. So, yeah, it's pretty consistent. There isn't really any, it didn't really feel like there was much of a climax. Um, like I said, you get into the later volumes, like volume 8, 9, and 10, and it does really focus more on Fujimoto than the specific character that's been given the Ikigami. Whereas the first few volumes is literally, you're pretty much just following the character that's given the Ikigami. Um, yeah, so if you haven't heard of this, Ikigami The Ultimate Limit, definitely check it out. The art, like I said, is absolutely phenomenal. Um, and this is one where, like I said, if you liked the first volume, then you really will probably like the rest of the series. Um, the art is kind of haunting in some points. Like you can see, like this face is kind of pulled a lot for a lot of the characters. I just really like it. It's pretty cool. And it also is interesting to see Fujimoto kind of struggling to maintain some semblance of sanity, because he in his heart knows that this is wrong but can't do anything about it, and that is pretty interesting, on top of all the interesting stories that everybody that you get to see from all the people receiving the Ikigami. So I think that's it. If you have any more questions about this series, definitely let me know. um, yeah, thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed and would like to, please do. And let me know if you want to talk about anything else you've seen on my channel. Definitely open to discussion in the comments, and open to making videos if you have any questions. Thanks for watching. See ya.